Hello, hello. Hey guys, sorry about that. I always forget to turn on my mic in the Discord. So, what's up, Zillin? Thank you for the raid. D-Jugs, what's up? Thogly, what's up? Pallywags, thanks for showing up first. Belial, how's it going? Thank you guys for coming. Really, really appreciate it. I'm here with the notorious Dr. Burns.
What
Yes, you are a professional, Zillin. We always approve of your professionality.
And he's never had any audio problems ever.
Never, never, never. So, welcome, guys. I'm glad you're all here. What happened to the beard, Dr. Burns? That's a good question.
Bro, it fell off. I went running the other day, and I think I went too fast.
Oh, damn. He turned into the Flash. That's what I hear.
Yeah, my clothes fell off too. It was really weird.
Ooh, I'm kind of sad I missed that. Okay. No, how's it going? I haven't had you on. I think this is our first like real interaction together, right? So, feel free to like introduce yourself. I know you're pretty popular. Is a little bit of an understatement for the Ashes of Creation community. So,
Thanks,
yeah, I love watching your video, your bespoke stuff. You definitely get like a lot of the views from a bunch of people, and you have probably some of the best quality in Ashes of Creation community I've seen so far. So, why don't you go ahead and of course. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and kind of maybe explain why we're here having this discussion today.
Yeah, for sure. So, I'm a longtime watcher of Ash's stuff. I was jealous that people were having fun conversations without me, and I would make comments in chat every now and then, and people would ignore it when I would make comments. And I said, I'm tired of being ignored, so I'm gonna make some content. And, I
think that's how most of us. I think that's how most of us started. We're just like, damn, I want to talk about it, and I can't talk through Twitch chat, so we might as well do it ourselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm coming up on a year now of making videos. I've made, I don't know, 50 plus videos, and a lot of it is most of my content is edited, scripted stuff where I go in depth on kind of a niche subject. And that's really, I mean, if you watch my intro video that I posted a year ago, that's really the goal of the channel, right? It's just to talk about, if I don't go viral or whatever, that's fine, because I want to be able to have conversations about things that matter to me. And I don't plan on getting like watering down my content for the new audience, right? I plan to, I think the new audience, hopefully they'll funnel through Nice, they'll funnel through Narc, and hopefully they'll funnel through Llewd Lloyd, and hopefully they'll land in my channel, and I'll be able to talk about some very in-depth stuff. Although, bro, you talk about some meaty content yourself, by the way. So
yeah, I'm definitely about all the mechanics and like how and getting into like the really nitty gritty stuff, just because like I really enjoy like the esports part of like of this stuff, and I don't think MMOs have really got into that space where they could do it, and I definitely see a future where Ashes can do it. So yeah, I do like these in-depth conversations, so I'm really happy to have you on.
Well, and in fact, I think we were talking about Pallywag says big meat content. That's
hell yeah, dude.
What we got here. Yeah,
we got some chonkers. Yes. Exactly, Thogly.
So yeah, I think it was on so you messaged me. It was really funny. I was literally editing the part in my nodes video where I talked about it was just kind of a tangent that I was making that video, the part of visual progression that I like, how that goes. And you messaged me like, hey, we should talk, and we should talk about vertical progression. Not visual. We should talk about vertical progression. And I was like, let's do it. And that was funny because I think you and I have similar thoughts. And it's an interesting topic with MMOs because they go about it so many different ways.
Yeah. when
wait, the algorithm never recommended your stuff to me. I met you through the creator Discord, so I had to go through there and then start looking you up from there, and then I watched all your stuff. And bro, you go in depth on a lot of things that I think your channel is very underrated, and so I think it's just a matter of time before more and more people find it. But I mean, you already get good views, you got great subs already, so yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think majority of what I make is definitely gameplay related, and since we have no gameplay, it's very hard for people to get into this type of content that I make. But I imagine I'll get there or whatever. It's really not that big of a deal to me. I definitely think that when it was funny because when you put out that video and I hear you talking about vertical progression, I'm like, oh no. This is exactly what I wanted to talk about. And then you're like, and then you go on to the next topic. I'm like, oh, thank God. Okay, good. So it was kind of funny. But yeah, no. Basically, to get things started, what we wanted to talk about was how do I keep a game going for not just the first year when everybody's super excited about Ashes of Creation, not just the second year where they make a big change, but like 5 to 10 years down the line. Because like I look at esports and it's very hard to keep an esport going for a very long time. You even see like the death of baseball has been going on for like 15 years. So like that still hasn't died out yet. So League of Legends hasn't died out yet. Counter-Strike hasn't died out. We're actually probably seeing the death of our very first esport, which is like StarCraft. So like,
yeah, right.
I like, so these are the types of things that I think about when I want to think about the collaboration of helping develop a game, which we have the privilege to do with Ashes of Creation, because they are just so transparent with the progress of development and like where things are in that. So I definitely think that we have the privilege to help and try to navigate a way for us to move forward. And I think probably Riot's probably the only one that's really been able to do that. But beyond just the esports side, the actual casual player, how do they keep playing 10 years down the line as well? So I look at the systems to have 3 major types of progression, which Ashes of Creation has actually. So you have vertical progression, which is just like leveling, character progression, and stuff like that. You have horizontal progression, which is like story. You could even include like economy in here. And then you have variable progression, which is the life and death of the world itself with the node system. And also XP debt, I guess you could kind of consider that a type of variable progression. So you have ways to get that dopamine, those little bonus points, and then you have ways to, create risk, create loss, and then you have to figure out how does that exist for a long period of time. And I think that's stuff that like we can talk about in these 3 forms.
For you, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah.
So I ask this, and by the way, Llewd Lloyd will be on season 4 of Bespoke. He's already contractually obligated and agreed to show up.
It's on video now, so I have to show up. So
I asked this season if MMO players are just bad gamers who rely on vertical progression. Because that's been a thought in the past, right? People are like, oh, MMO players just suck, and all they're trying to do is get so much vertical progression that they don't have to get good at the game. They don't have to know the mechanics. They don't have to know your mechanics. They don't have to play against you. They can just overpower you with the vertical progression that they have developed. So do you think that's true? And do you think why do you think vertical progression is even necessary in MMOs?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So I don't know if it's wholly true. I don't think MMO players are bad. I do think MMO players definitely are probably the most analytical out of any other gamer that I've seen. So I don't think if you're being analytical and you're putting a shit ton of time, because let's be honest, it takes a shit ton of time to just dive into something, right? So if you're taking the time and you're being super analytical about things, I don't think you necessarily suck. I do think that they abuse or exploit the systems that are created for them so that they can just do content easier. And I think that's a natural state for gamers. They are always going to look for the best thing, the easiest thing, and how do I get there in the quickest way possible. I think that's a natural thing for gamers. I think if you are going to put any blame on like skill or anything like that, I would blame the developers for bad game systems. And so I wouldn't say that MMO players are bad, but they definitely abuse the system of just being stronger than other people by abusing the vertical progression system. That's what I would say.
Yeah, great answer. Do you think vertical progression is necessary in MMOs, or could and should MMOs exist without it?
So yes, I think it's necessary. I think vertical progression is pretty much necessary in every game. Even in like League of Legends and like MOBAs and stuff like that, you still have your level 1 to level 18, right? So you still get vertical progression. You still have your economy. That's really important. I think with MMOs, when you look at things, you think about like open world, and then you think of like instanced areas, which is something that I'm thinking about talking about a lot. And so, I think it is important to show skill in the open world and also in instanced areas like arenas. And we get into a weird spot where arenas and the open world begin to naturally go down two different balance paths. So you have like your PvE gear and your PvP gear. And I don't like that. I think it could exist in a better format. I guess that's why we're here today, to discuss about that. So,
yes, sir.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Actually, I'm actually interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I've talked with some people. I think Phantom X isn't. He had some really interesting takes on season 2 of Bespoke, and he was saying that he didn't think that we needed levels in MMOs, that you could just vertically progress by gaining abilities over time. And I thought that was really interesting. I prefer the level system because it's what I'm used to. It's what I'm expecting, and with a sense of I have done work and I am no longer at where I started. Since the work that I've done, I've moved in a vertical manner to be in a better situation than where I am. Humankind as a species has been engineered to think that way, over millennia to exist that way. Because if we didn't, then we wouldn't exist. We wouldn't progress as a species. And so video games take advantage of ancient dopamine paths within ourselves, right? Within our bodies. And that's what it does. So when we see the progress that we've made, think about playing a survival game. You think about how the land was, it was just forest, and then a few days later it's this gigantic base that you built, and how cool that looks. And that is very satisfying. That does provide a dopamine reward. And it's also nice. You hit level 49 and you're like, hey, I have a goal instantly, right? And I have a goal to hit level 50, and that provides a dopamine increase as well the moment you set a goal. So having that kind of progression for leveling, I think, is important. And I think it's a growth in the strength of your character over time, I think, is important, because it is an old dopamine pathway that video games hijack so we can experience those hits then.
Right. So you could like make the analogy of like hiking a mountain, right? So you start at the very bottom of a hill and you're just like making your way up, and throughout the entire way it's just a painful process, and then you get to the top and then you just see a beautiful sight and you hit this like beautiful dopamine of just like, wow, this is beautiful. Everything I did was worth it. And so you get those types of responses from like physical activities. You also get that from the ding, the GZ in chat. Like, you know, like you get these like external instant gratification.
Stimuli.
Yeah, the instant gratification of these things that like, oh, everything I did was worth it. I do think that Phantom X is I love Phantom X, by the way. I think
Yeah.
he makes great content and stuff.
Yep.
But I do think he has an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
And
I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm glad Ashes, and I think Chad agrees. Green Tag Pockets and AV on the same level too.
yeah, but like to give it a little bit of a thought of experiment on like maybe expanding on what he was possibly saying, because I played Tibia, right? And so in Tibia, you have like your base levels, and then you have like sword fighting, distance fighting, magic level, all this stuff. Your levels were pretty insignificant at a early stage of the game. Most of it was the character progression of like you training your sword skill and your shielding, and then and like maybe if you had good gear, like you would be really good too. So if like you had like an alt that just like funneled you really good gear, you could do that. And so I was like level 13 fighting level 35s and winning. So I liked that idea. Obviously, it seems to have grown to be like where people need to see power level actually exists, so they use levels to do that. Like if you're going to look at somebody and be like, oh, that guy is really buff, he's really strong, you don't really get that in a video game, especially in one as old as Tibia. So like the best way to do that is like, oh, he's like 3 levels above me, and then you just do the power level that way whenever you're like thinking about doing open world PvP. So I do think game mechanics are meant there to like facilitate what your character is seeing. Like the levels are something that show that. So I think that's fine. I think having levels is good, not just for dopamine, but also for just like visually seeing how strong is that guy. Can I take them on? And I like the idea that Phantom X had where there is more character progression. There is more skills.
There's more than just your levels.
Yes, like if there's more than just the level 1 to 50, you know? And even do we stop at 50? Right? Do we have a soft level cap that just keep going, but just very insignificant power levels are after that?
But let's talk about that for a sec. Why even have a level cap at all? I mean, some games, right? I mean, you got the ESO with champion points and Cyrodiil, where there was infinite vertical progression, and you could have, you know, freaking 1,600 champion points, right? And you are just a god compared to the plebes who run around the rest of Cyrodiil. So,
but you're no stronger than anybody else. You just look fucking cool. Right?
No,
or I guess you have champion points, right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the champion points made you insanely strong. I mean, you were a one-man army in that case. Like it was really interesting to see that situation, how they had unlimited vertical progression. Now they changed it. They put caps on it then, but the caps were like still 800, and then it went on from there. What do you think about unlimited vertical progression?
Well, coming from Tibia, I love it.
It still gives you something to work for, right?
Yeah, coming from Tibia, I love it, right? So I was always that like level 40 to level 80 character. I never reached like the fucking 200s and stuff like that. Some of these guys did. And now it's just completely overblown. You have like leveled like 2,000 characters or something like that because people have just been playing for so long, and they made like leveling easier and stuff. But yeah, no, I love the idea of infinite progression. I don't love the idea of infinite power progression because I like the competitive level. I like getting the dopamine of, hey, I reached this because I played this for so long. I'm level 300. That shows you that I'm much better than you, but that level 50 could still beat my ass if he's better than me. Like, I think that is an interesting way to, one, keep people playing and like keep dinging while also keeping the competitive integrity of the game. I think that's
Interesting.
I think tight level scaling and power progression is very necessary to keep the game competitively viable.
Yeah, and that, so I like what you're saying about stopping power progression at a certain level.
Mhm.
And I think Ashes will have ways to show that you are putting in the effort beyond level 50, right? That there will be titles, there will be achievements, there will be, you know, artisan, there's gear, mounts, all these things that will actually show that, hey, this guy didn't just hit 50 and stop. Like he's been working on it for a while. I consider myself a fairly I like competition quite a bit. I enjoy that. And as Zillan was commenting on last night, but even though I consider myself somewhat of a hardcore player, I have my limits, right? There are other people who would be able to play the game. They could no life the game for, I mean, way better than I could. And if there is infinite power progression, vertical power progression, then they don't need to know the mechanics. They don't need to have better gear. They could just look at me, right click, and delete me, right?
Yep.
Like there's no challenge. Like what's that called? The zone of proximal development, right? When when you're learning something. Like I have kids, so I know this because it's a parenting thing. But when you're teaching your kids something, or when you're talking to them, for example, you're teaching them to speak, you use like 75% of the words you use with them are words that they'll understand, and about 25% of the words you use with them are words they don't know. So you're pushing them to learn, and they can kind of figure out through context what you're talking about.
Exactly.
The zone of proximal development. So I like where, you know, you got max level players. One guy has played just the number of hours to get to max level, and then one guy has played 1,000 hours beyond that. I think the guy who's played 1,000 hours beyond that, he's going to be stronger in certain ways, but I still want it to be within striking distance.
Yes.
If the guy is very skillful, who only played enough to get up to max level, I want him to still be able to beat the guy who has played for 1,000 more hours than he has, because I think you were alluding to that as well. Wizzy says, Burns is sweaty. This is brand new information.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I like there being parity, and I think having some kind of cap on vertical power progression is necessary.
Yeah, I think Zillan, Gruntag, and Surgeon kind of like all have good points. Like unlimited vertical progression is a horrible idea, and you can see this in like things like Lost Ark. As the Golden Feather Tavern is saying, it's too much of a power. If it's too much of a power jump, it feels less exciting. Like if you're a new player, you're never gonna reach that level. I feel like when I return to Lost Ark, or if I go into somewhere else like playing the game, it does not feel good having to play 3,000 hours to even be at the same rate as this person. And they're like, oh, don't worry, bro, it gets better, but it doesn't. Like you just keep, there's just a consistent level gap between everybody. And then like this amount of time that everybody puts in for this like marathon of vertical progression that new players will never catch up to. And then they eventually get gatekept. This is why I think vertical progression has a major flaw, which is gatekeeping, because you do get these very large gaps in between people. And especially if it just makes you so much stronger, you will just it just makes some content trivial or insurmountable to other players. So I definitely think if you have too much of a gap, or like you have like one item that just gives you this power level that just shreds on everybody else, that's what you were alluding to when you were talking about like MMO players aren't good, they just have better vertical progression type of thing. And that shit sucks. It sucks on like unless you're the person that just got that item and you're just sweeping and having a good time, but it sucks for everybody else.
I think Ashes is setting up really well, and I know a lot of people don't like this gear degradation system where your or durability thing, right? Where your gear loses durability with usage and time, and you have to put the same rare materials into your gear to make it usable again, right? Playable. So people can't just vertically progress and then just hang and just be like, hey, I'm at the top, you know, I'm just going to rest on my laurels. No, you have to keep going. It pushes you up. And I mean, you can start to roll back down that hill. Let's say the top dogs, let's say Wizzy and her guild take, they become patron guild of Burnsville, and they're getting all the benefits from all the relics and all the passives that they're getting from their in node guild freehold and their guild hall and all that stuff. They can't just stop there. They have to keep going. The node will atrophy if people aren't participating in node activities, and also their gear will lose durability to the point where it's unusable, and they'll become weak again. So there's no going up and resting. You will start to slide back down that vertical hill if that's the case. And I think these mechanics that Ashes has are very well thought out for that.
Yeah, so I mean that is in itself touching on two of the other aspects that I talked about earlier, which is horizontal progression and variable progression, right? So we have the economy itself, which, you have your raw materials that go in, you have like your glint, and then that you can transition that to like gold or like actual currency. And then that currency will go into your item durability. And because of the horizontal progression, you have to keep going out into the world, keep raiding, you have to keep doing PvE things, you have to keep doing PvP caravan runs, you have to keep doing these things to get your gold up so that you can keep your variable progression under lock and key, which is your nodes and your gear. And so I think the systems make sense. I think the problem comes with how fun is that? How fun is that for the player? And will that keep players active? It's a very good system on paper. I want to see how it works in reality and how players react to that. So I think that's going to be interesting. I do think that is going to be a system they will change a lot. Because
you think they'll change that? How?
I think with balance patches, like they said in the AMA yesterday, the roadmap, balance changes every 3 weeks for these small changes. I think if players feel like durability is too bad, they're going to lower durability. If
they're going to be scaling how much it is, how intense it is.
Yeah, I think that'll change a lot with like balancing and stuff like that, especially with certain gear types, bug fixes, all this stuff. So I think from what I've seen in Alpha 1, the team is very, very quick to be like, oh, this feels bad, let me balance patch something real quick. And to be clear, Alpha 1 wasn't even a balanced, it wasn't balanced at all. It wasn't supposed to be balanced. Their goal wasn't balance. However, when players said, oh, this feels like shit, they changed it. Like they were very, very reactive to feedback. They were the community team to the dev team to be able to be like, hey, can you just change these numbers real quick? Easy tweak. They do it so fast. And that's something that I really appreciate because I think about like Riot, and they do their balance patches every 2 weeks. And it keeps changing the competitive environment, keeps changing the game. Not a lot, but enough to shake up the meta. And I think you can do this with not just how the game is for like certain things, because Lost Ark has a problem with Lost Ark and WoW have like a problem with changing power levels and stuff like that frequently, because you pick a class and you're in that class for a very, very long time. You're not like in League of Legends where you can just pick a different champion, right?
Sure.
You have to really stick with this character because I spent so much time and effort, and if you get nerfed, that feels bad. Like I spent like 60 hours, now my class is unplayable. Like that sucks, right? So MMOs have to be careful of that, but I do like the idea of like these balance changes happening quite frequently to try to keep things in check or whatever. And I think that's part of like variable progression and understanding like more about the game and stuff like that as you play.
I like what Pocket says. Who picks different champion in League? One trick all the way, baby.
He's talking from his top bard experience. I'm just kidding. No, he actually has a sick pike. I've played with him before. It's pretty sick.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, you generally like pick your role and you stick with that role. And if your role sucks, like ADCs in patch 8.10, yes, I'm still salty about it 6 years later. Yeah, like it is a lot of fun to play the champs that you like and they are good in the meta, and it doesn't feel good for
Right.
them to get nerfed, especially when you spend so much time and effort like you will in Ashes of Creation on your archetype / class. So
And
I
exactly
do
what
think
you
there
said.
is a balance.
Wizzy mentions right there too, man. She says, imagine hitting level cap and your main archetype sucks. That's a
Yep.
big fear.
Yep. So
yeah. But what's nice, I mean, then there's the secondaries, which I'm working on a video about this right now. The secondary archetypes, people are going to be underwhelmed. I would bet so much money that they're going to be underwhelmed when they see the effects that the secondary archetypes have. But that's individually per skill. I don't think they need to make wholesale changes, like gigantic sweeping changes to your build, but one ability at a time, making an augment, then the next ability, then the next ability. It marches your class in a completely different direction. It marches your build in a totally different direction. So when taken in summation, everything looks vastly different. You are in a completely different spot than when you were before you augmented your class. And I think that will be a great form of horizontal progression, right? Because, you'll be able to go one way or the other way, and it's nice. It'll provide flexibility. So yeah, your archetype, let's say they make the ranger suck, right? They're like, hey, it's all about the mage. The mage is the best ranged DPS. But the ranger then can pick mage as a secondary and hopefully get closer to that mage meta then.
Right. Zillion says seems highly unlikely that all secondary choices you have and augment choices you have will all suck. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I think that's very true.
I agree.
I definitely think I will be let down the most because I see so much potential with the secondary archetype system, and I know how difficult of a task it is to actually hit those expectations of mine. I'm already ready to be let down, but I'm still going to have my hopes up for this system because I think this will be the best way to change up arena comps, change up different specs and stuff like this for esports. So like I think you're not just doing the boulder parchment shears with what's better than this in types of like 3v5s or 3v3s and 5v5 arenas. You can like pick your comp and then like, we have a bard and a tank and a fighter, and now instead of just those three archetypes, those three classes, you have so many different permutations of like what that can consist of, and it creates a very, very deep analytical part of like counters and different types of classes and how your playstyle can change in these arena battles. And I think this is the heart of where my hope for esports and Ashes of Creation is the archetype system and how to get rid of metas and to really force a way into the space where someone can really outplay somebody just because of their play style and not because of the champion they took or the archetype or class that they picked. So I think that's going to be the cool part, and I'm really looking forward to that.
What I like about Ashes so far is So skill, and this is in the video I'm working on right now too. So there are games of luck and games of skill. Games of skill, your choice, you affect the outcome, right? Like games of luck, no, you don't really affect that much, but skill, your decisions, your effort or whatever affect the outcome of the game. So with games that make you make a million choices, it increases the potential for a skill gap. One of the reasons I like action combat is because you have way more choices, right? Like you got 360 degrees in both axes to choose which direction you're going to attack in. And I understand the light attacks for the ranged attack, the ranged light attacks are all tab target. Fine, nothing you can do about that. The melee light attacks have a cleave, which is essentially action combat. I mean, technically it is tab target because you are targeted onto something, but I could be targeted onto you and I could be fighting, pockets over here and I could be damaging him, right?
Yeah, you have a directional, it's still directionally based, skill based type of,
which is more skill based because there are more choices you have to make. But like, bro, with the number of things that you're making choices on in Ashes with the characters is already a ton, bro. Like you could skill gap someone before you even run into them because your build, you've spent the time and the effort to make things synergistic together. And the Bard was such a good example of that. I mean, if you have let's look at a good Bard versus a below average Bard. The good Bard is going to, from what we know of it, is going to have the two the two melodies active at the same time, and those he's going to rotate between the ones that are applicable to your group in that current scenario. He's going to be doing the stories and like juggling, keeping all the spinning plates going that are applicable for the situation you're in. So, let's say at the beginning of, let's say you do an 8v8 arena, right? That situation is different than if, let's say your team kills 5 of my players and it's just, a 3v5 or something like that, right? Then the Bard changes his play style to adapt to the situation. So the skill gap is going to be huge. In all the MMOs I've played, and I mean all the games I've played, there's a bell curve, right? A Gaussian distribution of skill. That's just, I mean, that's a normal, that's why it's called a normal distribution. That's because that's just
most of the players hit 50%, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Are in that middle group. The vast majority of them are. And then you get some people who are really bad and some people who are really good. And metas are meant for people under the bell, under the main part of that there. But on the edges, metas don't work for those players. Right. So I think with the amount of options Intrepid is giving us, there will be the skill gap from the really sweaty players from the higher end, I think will be pretty apparent. And I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, I am too. I think you hit on a couple really good points. So you have, one is MMO players typically hit like a bell curve. Well, I mean, like you still kind of get that in like other games, but it's more left skewed for like lower players skewed. Mostly because the higher skilled players have more time to play and they play it for their jobs sometimes at the very, very highest end. And then sometimes people will just like no life it. I do think right. Yeah. And so I do think that with a lot of these things, it will tend to skew to the left on the lower skill side. But I still think it'll have so much potential as long as you give players time back by not making infinite power progression. It's kind of like how we're talking about. So like when you look at League, even that takes immense amount of time to just know all the items, know all the champions, know all their abilities. And to do that with all the archetypes, classes, skills, augments, that's going to be a lot of work. That's going to be a lot of work on the players, and that's why I'm excited. But they also did things that were really, really good for like low skill floor, high skill ceiling, like you said with the bard, which is the crescendo ability. Instead of having the counterpart where you're actively thinking about which melody I should use with what and how do I move on to the next melody so that I'm perfectly playing for my team. Then you have the crescendo version where it's like I pick one melody and it gets stronger over time. Haha. Like,
Yeah, right.
like, oh, we need mana here. Let me just put this on. I don't have to worry about everything else. Like,
Yep.
so I like that they are thinking about both play styles and both levels of skill, and being able to do these types of things for multiple amount of players and make them both feel useful and wanted. That's what I really love about their design so far. But yeah, overall, I think when we look at how players really view like horizontal progression, I think a lot of it is going to be economy based. I'm not seeing much.
Yeah, can you tell me about that? What do you mean?
So when you are making money in crafting and whatnot, you are essentially doing that to get better gear. But in order to do that, you have to do things out in the world. You have to do like your quests. You have to do different dungeons to get better materials. You have to do crafting or gathering in order to make this money. Or you have to run PvP caravans to make money so that you can get gear. And the gear is what's going to kind of give you that vertical progression. But it's also giving you that like if I were to say like you're going from, I think this way. Okay. So if you're going from like 0 gold, this is like your gold over time, and then this is your vertical progression. As long as you're getting gold, you're getting gear, and you end up on this linear progression path. Sure. So like the gold itself is the x-axis in that form. That's how I view that. And you can do that through multiple myriad of ways in Ashes of Creation, which is great. But yeah, you can. I believe that you have the ability to really progress horizontally, and you have the ability to keep moving forward that way. I think Pockets also said like games of luck / skill. Actually talked about this earlier today when I anticipate being the BIS rotation for the cleric as it stands based on what I have my hands on mend if it charges. I hope that it takes the skill not just to be constant and cast mend. I think that was something else. It reminded me of something else that you had said, which is the games. I actually got in a fight with somebody, and I think it was Warriors or Richie's YouTube comments. I don't know why I got one guide, but yeah, like Ashes seems to be a very reactionary based game, and I think reactionary based is skill based. And you can be reactionary based and skill based in a tab target game. I've been playing WoW recently, and I think WoW is actually a skill based game because it is a reactionary game, and that is a full on tab target game. And I think that's why people like WoW's combat, because I hadn't played WoW for a very long time, but I have quite literally gotten addicted. I had a 14-hour stream on it the other day. But yeah, like if you are pushing buttons at the right time to counter something another person is doing by pushing buttons at the right time, that is skill. That is technically what we consider skill. Right. And Ashes seems to have that in the archetype kits. And that is another reason why I'm just like, you can grow in so many different ways. But I think the one thing that Ashes is lacking is character progression so far. I haven't seen much character progression. You don't see like the rune, which I think character progression could be either horizontal or vertical. Right? So I think you could be why I don't know why I just lost my train of thought here. What was I saying?
What I'm looking forward to is you know what an asymptote is, right? Where it
I don't actually.
So an asymptote is something that has a curve like this. Like it goes, it's a non-linear growth at first. It becomes kind of linear, and then it has like an inverse linear continuation of that. So you.
Oh, okay, yeah, I've seen that before.
To a point, and the improvements in your power are. There's diminishing returns, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That over time, your vertical progression, you can keep progressing, but the more you progress, the harder it is to gain, 0.1 power, right? And then you gain that 0.1 power, and the next time you gain that 0.1 unit of power, it's even harder, right? And so that would be like an asymptotic relationship for having vertical progression. And I think that would be ideal because it gives people who want to play forever, they can be like, oh, hey, look, I've gained one more power unit, and it took me 1,000 hours, and the difference between you and them is like, less than 1% still.
Yeah,
but
I think that's ideal for me too.
They still had something to progress for, which is what we were talking about.
Yeah. So, Wizzy says tab target may be reactionary, but character and actual
proprioception.
Proprioception. What? That's a word. First of all.
So
that's knowledge.
Is like if you close your eyes and you know where your body is when your eyes are closed. That's proprioception, right? Like
so basically muscle memory.
Yeah.
Okay. So in action combat brings higher skill level. Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Are you a physical therapist? What? The only people I know who talk about proprioception are PTs.
No, but he's teaching me shit today, dude. Yeah, the doc is in, dude. So yeah, no, I definitely agree. I definitely agree. If you're pushing the same buttons in the same order, it just becomes muscle memory and less skill. Especially if like you just know that this rotation does the most damage, and that's what I refer to as like rotation based gameplay. If the gameplay is too solved to the point where you're just pushing the same buttons in the same order, it's not reactionary anymore. And it is less skill based. So if you're doing the same opening, that's fine over and over and over again because that's your best opening. I think that's fine, but the opposite player or NPC mob might change that opener. And I think that becomes reactionary skill based. And so I think that's where the two separate is, do I always do this or does this not always work? And if it doesn't always work, then it changes my playstyle. It changes how I enter fights. It changes how I go into a different scenario. So I think that's how I view reactionary versus skill. Or versus like rotational, and that's skill versus non-skill.
Golden Feather said they felt like the node war testing was very reactionary combat, which is awesome to hear. So I mean, in breaking it down even simpler, right? In PvE, a lot of times you stand in a place and you have a rotation of abilities that you use, right? That is not very reactionary because you're just doing the same thing generally every time to get the most DPS, the most healing out, the most aggro, whatever. But in a lot of PvP situations, you can't have a rotation per se, because if you say, okay, I'm going to do this ability, I'm going to light attack, I'm going to do this ability, I'm going to light attack, and then I do this ability, it's like you're going to get, your position's going to be off, you're going to get stunned by someone, and then you're going to get wrecked if you do that. In other words, I like PvP because it is so reactionary, just like how you were saying. I get bored with doing things that are very, my rotation is this, and then first I hit this, and then I hit this, and I like the reactionary nature of it. I had a friend who said, the guy was ridiculous. It was So he went to Berklee College of Music, which is one of the best in the country. And he said that PvP is like jazz because it's reactionary. You hear that the drummer, wanted to speed things up. So okay, and then you hear that the bass player start changing the key. So you start changing your key, right? Like it is reactionary, and so PvP is jazz.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. But I also don't think that PvE can't be jazz either. Like I think if you give mobs mechanics like a dash or a charge, you know what I see a lot of the time, and I actually love this. This might be like a weird nitty gritty mechanic that people don't catch on to. A lot of mob abilities are player abilities. And so when you look at like the summoner Minotaur and he's summoning wolves to attack the player, I was like, can the summoner do that? Like, is that something the summoner does? And so like I start thinking about like these mobs, and do they take these abilities? And it kind of like cemented that in my head as probably does, because that like weird goblin thing was doing the whirlwind attack and it did a lot of damage against the players after like in the latest stream. I was like, you know what? Maybe that's a good way to make PvE interesting by giving them player abilities as well. And it's also a way to streamline this as a dev. So like you're able to streamline things that you've already created and just give it into something else. So I think that's really cool. I think it's an option for Ashes of Creation and something they're probably already doing.
Yeah, that's a great point. A really good observation. And they absolutely are doing that now that I think about it, right? I mean, we have seen player character abilities in the mobs. And now obviously, Tumok and the Firebrand that we see in a couple weeks, those are going to be different. But yeah, dude, that's really interesting to think about.
Yeah, so it's something I noticed, and I think it's something that we can look forward to as players as we play this a bit more. I guess something we haven't really talked about, and I know you have to go relatively soon, right? So
15-ish.
15-ish.
Actually, no, I got about 20. About 20.
Okay, so well, variable progression I think is something that we haven't touched on yet. So I think the most interesting part about Ashes of Creation is there is not technically an end game, right? So we've talked about like we want that isotropic graph where power scaling doesn't keep increasing. It's not like WoW where like I'm the hero and now I'm fighting titans and now I'm fighting extra dimensional beings and stuff like that. I don't like that type of like expansion, vertical progression growth either, because at some point you're going to run out of story, so how do you keep introducing content outside of just leveling the immensity of the next world or something like that? I'm not exactly sure how you do that. I feel like that's a very difficult thing to do as a dev, especially for an MMO. But variable progression in the node system, in the event system, and how players interact with it, I think players are going to be the main key. And if you want to keep this game alive, you need players. And if you don't have players, this game dies. And that is entirely based on this node system and this variable progression system where you have to have people fighting for resources. You have to have people fighting for these nodes and making sure that their node becomes better. And if one gets too strong, that other people are still able to take it down, even if they, if they don't have all those resources. You have to have like some sort of comeback mechanic, but also not make it feel like all this work that they did building this metropolis and how good they were, it just doesn't topple down too easily at the same time. So I feel like that's a very difficult thing for them to balance. How do you view the node system and how that all interacts with each other?
So I think ideally for longevity of the game with expansions and stuff, I know they are going to add levels, but I think it is good content for expansion when they add horizontal progression more later in the game, because it's still increasing the amount of choices that you have, right? So it's nice because it's like, oh hey, maybe with this new expansion update, I can now play this play style, or I can do this. It still gives you more content to go through without making the chasm between the new player and the veteran players bigger. So I do appreciate when they do stuff like that. But dude, with you talking about the nodes and expansion content, my guess is when they get to a point with expansions that there will be a level, the world has 5 level 6 nodes. Maybe they say, hey, now there can be 1 or 2 level 7 nodes.
Ooh, that's interesting.
And they call it really interesting. Capital or something, right? There's the metro, and then there's the capital, and that gives it is more city vertical progression, right? Yeah. And I think it's out there though, right? Because they like scarcity, and if you were to have one capital per server, and then you can have 4 patron guilds per, and it's more building spots, there are more relic slots, it's more unique, and it's a more sought after thing. Dude, I think that would be so much fun, man.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Also, Surgeon General Set and Wizzy are talking about how you should help foster role playing, and there is a reason RP servers are always the last realm standing in games. Yep. True. I mean, like, I like role playing. I did theater and stuff like that, and I think it's a good way to just kind of 1, kill time, 2, it just makes the world more interesting. And so, like, yeah, I do think the role playing community is in itself a way to keep games alive and keep games going. But I think for the majority of players, they are not going to be so into the roleplay. They're going to look at roleplay and like, oh, that's funny, that's cool, that's happening. But they're going to just go through the motions, I think, for the most part. So I think when we think about, and Ash, don't get me wrong, Ashes of Creation is going to have immense levels of roleplay. So I don't think there's anything wrong with how Ashes is going to be able to facilitate roleplay, especially with freeholds, taverns, different types of in-node housing and stuff like that. I feel like that's going to be an immense level of all of this. Thank you for coming, Clonage, Belial, Wizzy. Thank you guys. But yeah, I think when we look at how expansions could be, and we've heard Steven say that there is ways for them to open up new points of interest that people might want to go for by like going towards those areas and stuff like that haven't been like heat mapped out to a point. So I think that'll be another cool way. I love your idea of having like a big capital that people seek, either like in like the Western continent or the Eastern continent. Maybe you have like 2 capitals per server, maybe 3 if you want some real big wars. I think it'll be interesting to see, like, if you're on the Western continent, do you even want to go to the Eastern continent outside of like making money? Like, would you want to interrupt in their wars, and why would you want to do that? I think that'll be fun.
That is a fantastic point you bring up, and I think it's interesting because I don't know if you can have all 5 metros on one continent.
Oh yeah, because of the vassal system, it'll probably lock it out.
Maybe, but I'm also curious because we know there are 5 castles, right? And each of those have a ZOI. I wonder if metros are locked. You can only have 1 metro per castle ZOI.
I think that's how it is. I'm not sure though.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see, right? Like,
right.
I've asked that question before, and then Rive asked that question one time for me, and yeah, still hasn't gotten answered. But
They're like, stop. Who's giving you insider information? What's happening over here?
Let's say I'm on the Western continent and the Eastern continent is up and coming, right? And we're all trying to level. We're all trying to get metros. I'm probably going to go try to cut them off at the knees, right? Like I'll probably have a thing with my guild where we say, hey, around our city, we are open for business. We defend caravans. We want business. We want experience. We do whatever we can to foster a friendly environment. But if you go to the other continent, hey, no holds barred. Like, boys will be boys on the other continent. If you're raiding caravans and causing havoc over there, hey, that is our playground. So go do it over there. But don't poop where you eat, right?
Yeah.
Keep everything clean around your node, because we need people to be coming here and participating in our node, so it levels up so we get the benefits from that.
Yeah, we need to take care of our land management system. We need to make sure that, all that's not getting messed up. We need to make sure our alliances are in check, type thing. I definitely think that there is so much available to us as players to just be like, oh, I get to explore anything and everything I want. And I think because there's so much choice, I'm afraid, like, is this going to be too much overstimulation? Is there going to be too much? But then I think about it.
Bring it on.
But then I think about it and I like look at it from like the casual player's point of view. Cause like we're talking about like top 1%, top 10% of player base that are like really thinking about these things, right? And then we look at the casual player perspective and they chop tree, they hit rock, they pick grass, they hit monster. Like I think the casual player isn't going to be thinking about this geopolitical view, and that we as people that are addicts, I guess, who are following a game that quite literally doesn't exist, are really thinking about these systems in depth and trying to figure out the best ways and what we can do to like play with all these systems. And the casual player's like, oh, there's a PvP caravan. Yeah, I guess I'll join that. Like, yeah, I think these things are going to happen. I think these geopolitical things will exist, but I also think that, it's probably not too much overstimulation when I bring it down to a very casual level. I think it is going to be a big, vast world for casuals, and I think it's not going to be too much unless they are trying to chase a meta or something like that, or really try to join like one of these guilds that are chasing these things.
So I think you bring up 2 points. First of all, the game does exist, just not for you and I because we're not in testing right now. But it exists, and it exists for some people in chat. Like to us, the game does not exist, but to them, it is very real, and it will be very real to us here in a couple months. And then second, I agree. I think the majority of people won't understand. I mean, it was kind of like I talked about it in my node video that people who were playing New World and didn't look at the world map and didn't realize that my guild owned the server, right? And out there, I was just trying to look for a pickup group. No one in my guild was running dungeons, and so I was like, hey, I'm looking for a group, and they're like, who are you? Can anyone vouch for you? Dude, you have all of your houses in the territories I control. I've been shot calling all of the wars for the house. I mean, I shot called a couple wars. I didn't shot call all of them, but I was like, So I was a somewhat powerful player on the server, but the average player had no idea because they were so disconnected from all that stuff. So I think there's going to be an element of that in Ashes where the casuals won't care, right? They'll just be like, oh, I like this node. This has the armor smithing benches, and maybe I'll be an armor smith. And they'll do that, and then if the node gets leveled, then they're like, oh, that's sad, but okay, I'll just move on to the next one, and it won't really cost them anything.
Right.
And then I think, though, what's different between New World and Ashes is Ashes will actually influence its casual players to participate fairly heavily in the node system and actually care and have stake in the node system, because the node currency system. Because if you want to have a house or a freehold or participate in, oh, did I just, I think I lost Cam.
Oh, whoops. You're good.
Yeah, all good. Okay, cool. Yeah. So, oh, I'm back. Yeah. So they're making part of it in Planendorf and Justo. Justo is the guy who does all the node stuff. They were talking about that on the Node War live stream, that they're trying to design systems which forces even the casual players into nodes, so they have to participate with those systems.
Yeah. I think it'll be very interesting because in Alpha 1, we had basically one quest line, one story quest line that was what they call the Golden Path, which is like kind of like the story arc progression where you like go through these things, and then you go to a certain zone of interest. And the place that gave the most XP always gave the same nodes the same XP because they were within those territories. So I think that when they do the Golden Path, they have to make sure that every node has the ability to gain that XP, that same XP. Otherwise, you're just going to have on every single server the same nodes popping up everywhere.
So, I mean, main storyline, right? Like the Golden Path, right? Like you start off here, then you do this, then you do this. Is that going to be a thing with Ashes?
Well, they've alluded to saying like there is the main storyline, there is something that you follow, and it will take you to the zone of interest, like the Tower of Carfin. And then whenever you do that, you have the ability as a server through the very first playthrough, your decision making will choose either option A, B, or C. And then depending on like the majority of the player base, what options they chose and how they completed it, one of those NPCs may no longer be there for part 2 of that story arc. So,
bro, you bring up such a good point, man, because it is impossible for the main storyline quest, the MSQ, right, to take you through all 85 potential node ZOIs. So they are already, by having an MSQ, they're already bifurcating the nodes. There will be in nodes and there will be out nodes within the MSQ. And the in nodes, it will be smarter to try to plan to be a patron guild of that node. Yeah, dude, that's fascinating. That's a really good point.
Yeah, so I think about these things sometimes, you know? I think about things. But yeah, I definitely think that this has been an awesome conversation with all of the stuff that we're talking about.
If you got 10 more minutes,
10? Perfect.
It's the babysitter. Yeah, babysitter's coming. So at
okay,
5,
cool.
Or I guess at 40 after.
Let's go. Okay, cool. I love talking. So, plus, I don't think the reason why you lost Cam, by the way, is because I was looking at the Ashes category, and I don't think there's anybody streaming. I think Chibi had to delay their stream today too because Vertex not coming into town quite yet. He's coming back from a work trip, so I don't think he was able to make it. So that's unfortunate for that.
Pockets asked if we're stoked for Central servers. I know you're US West. I am very happy that America's time zone, Central Time, will have the servers for Alpha 2, because I think it bodes well for at launch that we actually get Central Time Zone servers, which I think, in my opinion, will be the most populated servers, because everyone from the East and from the West, they'll want to be able to play together, and I think Central will be popping.
I agree with that. I am West, but my guild was all East, and the reason for that was because we have like some people in like Europe and stuff, and the easiest way for them to play is on the Eastern servers. I also want to avoid the West servers like the plague, because you get all the Chinese bot farmers and like gold farmers and stuff like that. So like
ping over there or something, so they pick those.
Yeah, so it's lower ping, but they also like can make a lot of USD off of that. They make it like their job to like make money on the Western coast for the most part. That's how it is for like Lost Ark and stuff. There will be a lot of RMT stuff that Intrepid is going to be doing to get rid of
Bro, I'm making a video about RMTing right now.
Yeah, the lazy peon video.
Yes.
React.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking.
Bro, you liked that tweet. I think you liked that tweet too, and I appreciate it.
I did.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So yeah, so I think they will be limiting RMTing. I still think it'll exist.
There's no way that they solve it. It will exist at some level as long as it's just not rampant. I think we're going to be just fine, because RMT could exist if just between friends. Like if I message you, I'm like, yo, Lloyd, I need some gold. Can I send you some? Can I Venmo you some? I mean, there is nothing they can do about that. They have no idea what's going on. There is no way to stop that. But it's on a grand scale. And when it becomes like pretty much okay for everyone to do, where, you know how like in California and New York you can steal, but it has to be under $940 or whatever, right? Like,
I had no idea.
Yeah, so legal, or it's not necessarily legal, but it's not a felony if you steal under some dollar amount just under $1,000. Now it's becoming a lot more of an issue in those states, and so if you allow stuff like that to happen, if you allow RMTing, then it just blows out of hand, right? It goes nuts. And so I think as long as they keep the lid on it, then we'll be fine. But there's no way to end it altogether.
Yeah. I agree. But yeah, I still think I'll end up, because I think I get like the same ping in Texas as I do LA from Vegas. Nice. So nice. I could choose one or the other, and I think I'd rather choose Texas if I'm being completely honest with you. So I would love to see because there's so many different guilds and so many different players that I want to play with, that I don't think we're all going to be able to line up on how we want to do this. Like, I know Genesis wants to go for like a really competitive server. The role players want to go for like some sort of server. Like,
right.
I feel like a lot of these people and a lot of these players that I intermingle with, I'm like, I just want to play with all of you guys, but I know it's not possible. And I'm like, so I think it will come to a point where I'll have to make a decision, but we'll see when that happens.
Dude, Genesis is getting big. It's getting big. They have like 113 people for Alpha 2.
Yeah, that's crazy. We have like 90 in Grey Sentinels.
Yeah, which is good. I like Grey Sentinels. I've talked to a bunch of the guys. Had positive interactions.
Mm-hmm. A lot of good people. You said you're in a guild, or you have your own guild. Do you want to go ahead and shout that out here?
I'm in Ethereum. I haven't played with them yet. I know of them from New World. A bunch of my New World friends are friends with them, because once I quit New World, some of them ended up playing with the guys in Ethereum on US East. And so, I know of them by reputation, and I like Alec and his leadership. But I need to play with him. So I'm in Ethereum, and I'm probably going to be doing a video with Alec coming up soon. We're going to be talking about guild stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I've had a few interactions with some Ethereum guys, and they're all great. Arctic, thank you for coming. Thank you for the follows. What's up, guys? I've had a few interactions. They are very, very gameplay oriented. They are, they know their shit. Let me put it that way. Like the people that I've interacted with, they know what they're talking about. They're really intelligent players, and I can assume from what I've heard about the Node War stuff, they are really good players too. The breakup of the.
I don't think they have quite the numbers that Envious has, but I mean that's fine with me.
Yeah. I've heard that Envious has a lot of numbers, but I think Ethereum had won out on a lot of those fights in the Node Wars. So let's start let's start some guild drama right here, right now. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, it'll be fun to have like these guild wars and stuff like that. I definitely.
Yeah. Bro, node sieges in phase 2, which is super soon. I mean, we're doing node sieges in December.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's freaking crazy. And
subject to change.
Yeah, you're right. And really, there are going to be so many delays on these things. We just know it's going to happen. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. We know the delays are coming.
I was doing the AMA like co-stream yesterday, and they were avoiding the word delay, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna make this my thing. So yeah, if you know they give you dates, guys, if you're watching Ashes of Creation content and you see a date, just know you might get the big delay, okay? So yeah, it might get delayed. It might happen. You might get the big D, you might not. It might show up right on time, right as you scheduled it. You might get your D appointment, but yeah, I think a lot of these things, we have to temper our expectations whenever Intrepid gives a date. And I think that's something that Steven really wanted us to hound home as content creators, is like, hey, help us out here. We need your help.
Can I ask you a question?
What's up?
How did you feel about the schedule of Alpha 2 when you saw it? Like, you know, how it's the Friday through Sunday for phase 1, then the 5-day thing for phase 2, and then phase 3 becomes persistent. Or then the 5-day, then the phase 3 thing becomes continuous.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not gonna beat around the bush or anything. I'm not gonna bullshit you guys. Like, they delayed Alpha 2. That's what happened. Is they gave you or they gave us a little bit of snippets of like phase 1, phase 2, but really what A2 was supposed to be and always was going to be was phase 3, right? When we have all of the core fundamental parts of the game in and can play around with that, and the world is expanded. That's what A2 was meant to be, and it got delayed to May 1st. However, I don't care. I said multiple times that Alpha 1 or those keys or whatever were probably going to hit anywhere between $70 to $100. They ended up being $120 for phase 1. I don't think that was like a catch-22, damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing. Like, they were fucked either way. They just picked a price and sent it. You're either a scam or you're just giving away free money or something like that, and making the people that had previously bought now FOMO. So like, it just felt really bad for Intrepid that they had to be in that situation. It felt really bad for whatever they could do. I don't think I would have envied to be in that spot as Margaret or Steven, but it is what it is. I'm not too worried about it. Like, hey, they need more time. It's development, whatever.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you there. That I don't necessarily feel like it was delayed per se. I understand what you're saying when you say that. I think if they had just said one sentence, hey, we know we said persistent before, it will eventually become persistent in phase 3. So we're sorry if you were misled by that. It eventually becomes persistent. I think that would have gone miles for us, man. Like, AGS is a terrible game studio in terms of how they treat their players.
Yeah.
Stuff like this feels a little bit, the communication feels a little AGS-y, right? Where they do something wrong, and instead of just acknowledging and saying, hey, we recognize, and taking ownership, right? It feels like there's not much ownership in this. There's not much ownership in, hey, you know, I know 2 weeks, I know a month ago we were saying we're going to be in Q3, but now it is in October. They purposely didn't say Q4. They didn't say delayed. It's like, hey guys, it's okay. Just take ownership of it though. Just be like, we were working. It's not, we're in crunch time right now. We're trying to get it out to you. We are saddened that we didn't meet this. And yes, it is delayed until October, but we're going to make sure that it's the best experience possible. Like, taking ownership of something would go a long ways for the community, instead of trying to co-opt the definition of persistent. Do you remember a few months ago, they're like, well, you know, some people think persistent means, it's like, no. There is one definition of the word persistent. It is synonymous with continuous. Though in the past, when they were saying there are going to be scheduled downtimes and stuff, they then gave the disclaimer for maintenance. So
yeah.
To say that we are in persistent Alpha 2 starting on October 25th is a misnomer. We're not stupid. Don't treat us like we're stupid. I understand there are a lot of smart people at Intrepid, but it is insulting to gamers when you don't take ownership of stuff like that. So I still think they're great. I'm not losing faith in Intrepid. However, this communication is bad communication, and if it continues along this trend, that is a bad trend line to be on, and I hope they rectify, because it's not something that I particularly enjoy feeling like I'm getting duped or won overed. Right? That's not great.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I've said this. There was a Narc video where he said that we don't know as investors to this project because we paid the $500 package fee or $375 package fee or whatever. We don't know what we're testing, and that's Intrepid's fault. And I completely disagreed. I was like, if you put money into something and you lose it and the product ends up being shit, that's your fault. Like, you just made a bad investment.
Sure.
Like, so like, yeah, communication is really important. I think it really shows like their branding going forward, that the communication, what you said, is very, very important. I do think it would have helped us out as content creators if they did say that. However, I do know that they are very fallible. And when Steven was talking about how he hated crunch time and that they are in a state of crunch,
right.
I
he
thought
was
that was
apologizing to his devs then,
to his teams.
That was a good look.
Yeah,
right.
and that was the most authentic look I've seen from Steven. And that was deep for me.
He was owning it, right? Mm-hmm. He was taking ownership of it.
And that's what you're looking for.
My recommendation is to do that with everything.
Yeah.
Read the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, right? Mm-hmm. Like take ownership of it, because it is good to see, and it is a sign of strength when people do that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you full-heartedly. And I think that was an example of when it was good, and the communication necessary should be like that going forward to the community as well. Not just his dev team, but also to the community. So I definitely think I agree with you.
Bro, you're the man. Fun being on here and talking with you. Looking forward to season 4 of Bespoke.
Absolutely.
It's going to be it'll be a good time. We got a good lineup already set up for it. So,
yep. Absolutely. Well, thank you for stopping by and having this wonderful talk. I'll probably post this on YouTube very, very shortly here. I'll probably since there's not going to be much editing that I need to do, so it should just show up on YouTube pretty quickly today, guys. So yeah, thank you for coming. I know you got stuff to do. I don't have anybody to raid over to, unfortunately. So if the chat wants to lead me on a raid, go for it. I would love to. It's corporate speak versus small business talk. Yes, but you know, it is the name of the job. I essentially, he is doing what he needs to do for PR standpoint.
Bob said it.
Just cut the shit.
All right, GG. Thanks, man. I got to take off.
All right, have a good one.
Hey,
I'll see you later.
Guys.
See you guys.
Thanks for showing up, chat.